What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about why the success of Astrobot is so important. Now, there's actually quite a few reasons. Some of them we've touched here and there when they announced it, and I mean, oh my god, the game just looks so freaking good. I cannot wait till September. I think it's going to be one of the bigger games of the year. I think it's going to be one of my more favorite games of the year. But I do want to discuss, that impact. Now, don't take this because I never want to come off this way for any game. I'm very much you do you. I'll do me. This is not a you have to support this game. It's not a if you don't support the game, get lost. I don't want you around. Not that. It's, I think this game is going to be successful. I'm going to get it. I'm going to, cover it and do all those things. I think the game is going to work, and then what will that do, right? What's that going to spin off of in the future? That's all this is. If you don't want to play the game, you don't want to support the game, I'm not making you. I'll never make you, okay? That's kind of a big thing on the channel. But I do think it's important. I mean, with all that being said, I do think this is an important game to show PlayStation we want certain things. But it's also, in terms of, I think, the environment of, how this game was created. And I want to start there. So there was a little story that happened a couple weeks ago, right? Right around the time that the previews were starting to come out and people, got even more excited, right? Because people were actually able to play, I think, 3-4 levels. There was word that it took them 3 years to make this game with 60 developers. Now, I want to start there. See, that's more on the, I would say, development side of the game, right? I actually think that's almost equally as important than, what this can spin off of and how we can get future games and whatnot. Honestly, I think they're kind of intertwined. One of the things we've been talking about so long, right, is, well, at least I have, you don't need every game to be this 60, 70-hour open world thing, right? You need a little bit of diversity in your gaming catalog going forward. I'm talking PlayStation, considering this is a PlayStation game. And so the reason why they're, intertwined, it's easy to just say these things, right? But the way these studios are built nowadays, pretty much all of PlayStation studios, almost all, right, is that they're big teams, really big teams. And there could be more than one team inside of a, development studio. And what's always seemingly the problem, right? So many people working on a game for 5-6 years, the budgets balloon to $250, $300 million, and then there's so much pressure on that game to sell, and then if it doesn't do it, or if it does sell, but it just doesn't sell all that much, you might even just break even when really you should be making a lot more money. So from the development side of things, I think this is very important to PlayStation because this shows, wait a second, and I think this is actually important to the gaming industry. It's something I've been, pushing on so much over the last couple of years. Oh, wait, we can make games that take less time. We can make games with less people. Now, I'm not saying fire everybody, right? I've actually petitioned, well, if you have a couple development teams, why not split a couple of them in half and allow some teams to be 50, 60, 70, 80 people, have a couple of them, right? And you can get 2, 3, 4 year development times while you also have your big teams make your big games, quote unquote, right? That are 60 hours long. It takes them 6, 7 years to make. Why can't we do both? And it just seems like more and more, right? We're leaning one side versus the other. Now, again, I don't want to leave the other side behind just in the same way, I think other people would be hesitant to even do this. As I've always kind of said, I just want diversity. That's why I always liked that PS3 era. Maybe it wasn't so reliant on open world games, but the PS3 era was about diversity. You had your shooters and Killzone and Resistance. You had your superhero game of Infamous. You had your action adventure of Uncharted. You had the second party games like a Heavy Rain type thing, right, Beyond Two Souls. PlayStation All-Stars, you literally had a fighting game in there as well, right? So it was just, now again, I actually didn't list any open world games, but hopefully you get my point, right? The just diversity of it that we really don't have as much anymore. So to me, that's a big thing because it's one thing to just say it. It's one thing to say, well, just take less time making a game. Take 3-4 years to make a game instead of 5-6-7 years. Have less people on the. Not saying fire, but split your teams more strategically. Easy to say it, but unless it's it has to be done so you can make a point of it, so you can make an example of it. And this is actually, I would say, this is the perfect example because this is a game that seemingly is going to have the replayability, but it's not going to be super long, right? This is probably a 6 to 10 hour game with the ability to really perfect each level, right? With time trials and all that stuff. It's a meaty ish game. I mean, maybe not as meaty as the 100-hour games nowadays, but it's got meat to it. It's got replayability. It's got, I think the most important part, fun. And that kind of leads into, what makes this game so special in the first place, or what hopefully will make it so special, right? Not just is it different, but like I think it is going to be a very good game, right? So what does that show? It shows, okay, we can do these kind of standalone 10-hour games. It's about the quality. I think that's something that you realize when you play Astro's Playroom, hopefully in Astrobot, which it seems like it, right? It's like it matters the quality of the level, not necessarily how long it is or, anything like that, but it matters just how good each level is individually. And as long as they nail that, then they have a winning game. So, okay, that's one side thing. I think that is very important, not just to PlayStation, but also the industry. And this could prove, hey, you can do more of these, which, by the way, gets you more of these type of games. Now, the other easy answer, I spent so much time talking about the first thing. The second thing is much more easy, right? Well, like, what can this get us if it's successful, or why is the success so important? You get more games like it. The simple fact is, while I spend all this time talking what I just did, this is really kind of a rare game. And that's actually kind of sad, like when you say it out loud. Like, well, there's a reason why people are so excited for this game. And I do think even in a world where this type of genre and these type of games are more, out there, but I do think an okay amount of the excitement for this game, which you could say good or bad, it's kind of up to you. A good amount of the excitement is simply because it's different. You don't always want to rely on it, right? It's almost like Hogwarts Legacy. You don't really want to rely on people buying the game to spite others. You want people to buy the game because of the game, not to get after other people, right? It's okay. I mean, people buy games for whatever reason. But you normally, I think, if you're marketing it and you're making a game, you want people to do it off of the game. If they're doing it for other reasons, it's like capturing lightning in a bottle, right? Like, you might have it now, but like, are you going to be able to do that, long term? And that's kind of the thing with Astro, where I don't think all the excitement is for that. I think it's also because it looks like an amazing game. But I do think some of the excitement for Astro is this is what we've been asking for so long, just different type of things, and they're doing it. So, I mean, cutting to the end of it, well, what does it do if it's successful? Simply, it gives us more games like this. Now, I've talked about the Sly Coopers of the world. I don't want to get too far into that. I kind of want to make that a video on its own. But I do think, because it's not, I don't want to call it like a childish or like a kid-like game, but I think this speaks to like multiple generations. I think somebody like me can absolutely love it. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I think she would love it. I think, well, maybe not, but she's not really that much of a gamer. But I think kids would like it, teenagers, adults, whatever. That's what I think this game is going for, right? It's kind of being a game for all ages, which is a Horizon like that? Is even God of War? Now, I think God of War maybe a little bit more, but, are these other games like that? Not really. Again, not saying every game needs to be an Astrobot and that every game needs to be a platformer made for all ages, right? I'm not saying that at all, but I think we need more of these games to kind of just make it where it's a natural part of the rotation. Plus, another thing that kind of ties the first point I made with this point that I'm making is, if you have this game work, and they realize, okay, so maybe this platform genre, this a little bit more childish or kiddish type thing works, right? Okay, well, we can do that. And then the good thing is we also have the structure that it takes less people, less time. We can get these games out more often. So that would really please me. I think that would please a lot of people, because one thing you see quite often is just people mocking the system, mocking the structure of X game is going to take 6-7 years. Well, what if I told you that, and again, that's why I think when you're making a studio or you're making development teams or whatever, you can have that game that takes 7 years. You can also have another team working on 2 Astrobot type games in the same span of time. And that just helps the company. That helps the brand. That's 2 more games you're selling. You're not using that many people. It's not using that much time. You know what? Those games might actually strike fire. It actually goes back, again, to what I was talking about, like the PS3 era. The more opportunities you have to, like, strike, you have the opportunity to sell. If you do 2 games like an Astrobot in the same time that you make, say, Horizon 3, maybe Horizon 3 outsells 1, maybe it outsells both. But maybe all of a sudden one of those 2, smaller games explodes. and maybe one of them sells 5, 6, 7, 8 million, becomes a franchise. That's how you make franchise, I believe, right? I don't know. It's risky nowadays to make a franchise that takes 6, 7 years to make, costs $200 million, and that's the start of your freaking franchise. That is tough. It has happened. I would say on a lesser scale, maybe even like a Plague Tale. Plague Tale feels like a higher, budgeted type thing, kind of came out of nowhere, and has become, I think, a legitimate thing. But for every one of those, you have a lot of failures. You know what I mean? You have a lot of games that try, Immortals of Avium, let's say, right? That budget ballooned, and it's the start of an IP, and it was kind of there, but, not all the way, and it didn't really work. Well, if you have games that cost, however much, maybe 50 to 100 million, maybe half or less than half of a big game, less risk, you have less people working on it. It comes out faster, so you can get a couple of them out in the time that you have a God of War come out, and maybe one of them hits. So I think even from the business side, this should be such an easy thing. I really don't understand why it's not an easy thing for PlayStation and anybody. We're talking about PlayStation because it's Astrobot, but I believe this is just such an easy thing that anybody could come up with. Sadly, I guess you have to prove it to them almost, and that's the situation we're in with Astrobot. So again, I'm not saying you must buy this game, but I feel very confident in its success, and I think with the success is hopefully going to come all of these other things. Some games, not all games, some games that are quicker. You'll probably get more Astro games, right? You might get the Slies or Jack and Daxter, some of those types, those things as well. But those I kind of want to leave for a separate video. But I think it's the structure of how these companies might operate. You not completely changed, but at least maybe they're open to like more things than they were right now, right? That's what I think you can get if an Astro comes out and sells 5, 6, 7 million units, which I think it could. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.